During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively low in the heavens, I at length found myself, as the shades of the evening drew on, within view of the melancholy house of Usher. I know not how it was, but with the first glimpse of the building, a sense of insufferable gloom pervaded my spirit. I say insufferable, for the feeling was unrelieved by any of that half-pleasurable, because poetic sentiment with which the mind usually receives even the sternest natural images of the desolate or terrible. I looked upon the scene before me, upon the mere house and the simple landscape features of the domain, upon the bleak walls, upon the vacant eye-like windows, upon a few rank sedges, and upon a few white trunks of decayed trees, with an utter depression of soul which I can compare to no earthly sensation more properly than to the after-dream of the reveller upon opium, the bitter lapse into everyday life, the hideous dropping off of the veil. There was an iciness, a sinking, a sickening of the heart, an unredeemed dreariness of thought which no goading of the imagination could torture into aught of the sublime. Edgar Allan Poe, Fall of the House of Usher. Welcome back to the Well House Exorcism. This is your ghost, the host of the most, Shanna.
And this is Puckwa PJ, here to say that was a poetic intro.
Well, it's going to be a poetic outro, actually, because that one doesn't rhyme. The last one does.
But it's Poe.
Oh, no, I got it. Anyway, we have special guests back, finally.
Yeah, been a while.
Has.
Enjoy your summer off?
Yeah, it was great. Best time ever. But we miss you guys.
Yeah, now we're dragging you back every week.
Yeah, sorry. What are your names again? Who are you?
I just go by a series of numbers.
Oh. What's your binary? Okay, go ahead.
He's part of the system.
100-111-00.
Is that legit, or are you just guessing?
I'm just guessing.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea.
What we don't know is that you just said something really terrible to our listeners.
I don't think so.
I'll have to click the uses explicit language for this one.
I know. Just have like a beep sound.
What's your name?
I am Laura.
Ooh, I like it.
Fancy.
And I'm Ray.
Welcome.
Been a
back.
while.
Yeah.
What are we talking about this time, guys?
What are we talking
Prison.
Okay, listen. Not all of us are going to prison. I'm too pretty for prison.
Me too.
That's true. Yeah. All right, who's going? How do you two? Shoo.
Well, I mean...
about? I just have a flashback to the part of the museum where it's like, have you ever committed a crime? If you go to the no side, it's like, wow. Are you sure?
So what are we talking about, Laura?
So, this is a little bit of a throwback for PJ and I, because we're originally from New Jersey.
Yes, you are.
Right across the Burlington Bridge, and our grandfather had a shop in Philadelphia, a watch and clock shop, so we were there quite often in our childhood, but never before had I gone to Eastern State Penitentiary.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to get copyrighted. Yes, we're discussing Eastern State, and I feel like we cannot do this in one episode. It's like Gettysburg. We got to just go for a deep dive. So part one is going to be the history. So you history buffs, enjoy this. If you're not a history buff, listen to it anyway. It's important for later. There'll be a test on this. This is Hayden's back. Part two is going to be Carrie, one of our friends. She's an expert on Eastern State. She has been there since forever. I'm pretty sure she just lives there. What you say?
I mean, she lived there for sure. Yeah,
Carrie, I know you're listening.
Before COVID, pre-COVID, like she was there all the time.
We're gonna go through this history
daily.
Well, there's plenty of rooms.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's staying different every night. I'm a little concerned because we're gonna go through history, and she'll be at her house when actually, like, I foresee it, and I'm gonna get messages on Facebook from her. Carrie, don't message me. I'll make me feel bad. And then part three will be all the spooky stuff. So Jackie, our super fan, is our medical expert. So she's going to talk all about the terrible things that happened there for medical reasons, put that in air quotes. And they'll discuss all the spooky stuff. So spooky stuff is part three. Although part two is pretty good too. Episode. Part two is Carrie's personal stories too, and that's a good episode. Yeah, we already recorded her. She got some pretty cool stuff.
I'm excited, and I'm excited to go more into the deep dive because I know we recently did the tour together. It was very, very interesting, but I'm very excited to hear more and everything that you've learned.
I learned. You'll be happy. There's one part of this in my script that you'll be super excited about.
Okay.
Yes. I can't wait to have you
All right.
listen to that part. But when we did our audio tour, who was our talker?
Steve Buscemi.
You pronounced it wrong, apparently.
Apparently.
I disagree.
Oh.
I don't care how he pronounces his name. Ray is correct. No. Steve Buscemi. That just sounds wrong.
I'm really good at, like, if I know someone's name and they correct me on how to pronounce it, it's like just in there. Like, I will never call him Steve Buscemi again.
I will.
Because I've heard it 2-3 times on the audio tour where he says his name, and I'm like, okay, it's Buscemi.
No.
I got this.
It is not.
You know what? I'm that way, but somebody actually has to correct me. Like, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
I will remember it better. Like, I remember this
if it
one
comes
person.
from the person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nope, it's Buscemi. I don't care. He got his name wrong. So anyway, before we go into... Poor guy doesn't know how to pronounce his own name.
All this time.
Oh,
I know.
All this fame.
Still couldn't do it. So references for this section, just because I like to put this out there before. All of my information came from, our tour, obviously, the audio tour, but also Eastern State Penitentiary, Crucible of Good Intentions by Norman Johnston, Haunted Pennsylvania, Ghosts and Strange Phenomena of the Keystone State, which is a long name, by Mark Nesbitt and Patty A. Wilson.
Mark Nesbitt.
There you go,
We
Laura.
love Mark Nesbitt.
Yes, we do. Images of America, Eastern State Penitentiary by Francis X. Dolan, and Philadelphia Haunts by Catherine Driver. Was it Diver? Sorry. Our last episode was about the Dively, so my brain's saying Dively.
Okay.
Have you listened to that one yet?
No,
The
not
Curse
yet.
Of Ribbon Rock.
I
What is wrong
know.
with
I'm
you?
behind. I'm behind.
A little lot. All right. So let's set the scene, shall we? And then you all can take it away. It's all Benjamin Franklin's fault, as I like to say. Well, and capitalism's. But anyway, in 1787, a bunch of Ben Franklin's friends all met at his house to discuss in detail more humane ways to, house and rehabilitate inmates. These were Quakers, and they firmly believed in the tenets of repentance and forgiveness. We live in Millville. We get the Quaker ideal.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously. But in any case, with this, they created a new term for prisons, the penitentiary. So it is all thanks to Ben Franklin and those Quakers that this exists.
I'm so happy you said penitentiary, because that's how I always want to say it.
When I'm reading it off the script, but I say penitentiary.
I know.
Yes.
I force myself to say penitentiary, but it just feels wrong.
But it is technically
it is.
penitentiary, right?
Yeah, we say
I don't know.
tertiary, so we should say penitentiary.
Yeah, most people say penitentiary,
Yeah.
Right.
I
That's
just say
like
ESP.
the common acceptance of pronunciation, but it just doesn't come off
No, yeah, it doesn't.
properly for me.
Anywho, the idea from Ben and his friends was to build a new type of prison that focused on religion and reflection, sin, and penance. Sounds like going to church every day. The prison would be a place of solitude where men and women, not just men, could reflect on their sins and find ways to offer penance. They would be released back into the community as good citizens who had learned the error of their ways. So they were all discussing this in the 1700s, right after we become America. And then, less than 50 years later, Eastern State is born.
Yep.
Or built, technically speaking.
And like any good idea, great on paper.
Great on paper. Any thoughts, Laura?
Less great in action.
What? Or else it wouldn't be on this podcast.
Yeah.
All right, anyway. Anybody want to take over and tell me a little story about Eastern State?
Well, it was actually opened in the early 1800s, right?
1829,
right?
yep.
Okay, and it was designed by that... Did anybody say that? John Haviland?
Nope. But we have discussed him before on here.
Mm-hmm.
When did we talk about John Haviland?
You didn't. PJ and I did.
Okay.
After we did our great deep dive on Pennhurst, we discussed Harrisburg State, and he designed Harrisburg State Hospital as well.
Okay. I thought the
Yes.
name was familiar. I did listen to that episode.
On, of course,
Yes.
thank you.
Mhm, yes.
On my episode.
Mostly
got
I
you.
listen. I'm just a little behind.
This guy was the grandfather of prisons, wasn't he?
Yes.
This was not his only rodeo.
Nope. He was.
He made
was
other prisons, too. Like a dozen. Not made.
What a great resume booster.
I know. That would be at the top of mine. I designed a dozen.
Doesn't. He was well known.
You can
for
just call me the king of maximum security.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
You can just call me Mr. King. Maybe not.
Prison King?
Once again, this is a
That's
spooky
why he
podcast.
made it look like a castle.
I'm the king of something.
He must have really favored. I don't know. Was he from Pennsylvania proper?
No, he was born in England.
He was born in England, but he did other things in Pennsylvania too, especially in Harrisburg. I believe he did the Harrisburg State Hospital.
Yep. And he was known for doing a couple of churches in the area too. So he didn't just do prisons.
He was a goth man.
When goth was cool? Still cool? I'm confused.
I don't know.
It never died.
When goth was architecture.
That's a tag. That's a good tag for a resume. Or a book. Anyway, Ray, go ahead.
It kind of sounds like he had a perfect resume for this project then, because they were focused on religion and, imprisoning people. So he was sort of one foot in each realm.
He was a goth guy because Eastern State actually has a goth facade.
Neo-Gothic.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's a penitentiary. Sorry. That's funny. Oh, sorry. It's been a long day for me.
I agree.
Yeah. And that was that was the design of it to inspire intimidation, if I recall correctly.
The outside, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's built on top of it. An interesting...
But it was... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, you go.
I was just going to say, but it was really all for show. I mean, even up above, certain aspects of it were just done... I mean, if you were actually to scale it, some things were actually ankle high or
the Palisades
knee high.
at the top of the wall,
Yeah, it was strictly for show.
Yep.
Some of the windows, for example, although that's
Yeah.
not to say that this thing wasn't hardcore strong, because
Yeah, it was...
the walls were thick.
It still exists today, so... John Havlin knew what he was doing, that's for sure. But,
And style, too.
It's still in style. It never
It's
went
still
away.
in style,
See? But it was actually
Goth
built
is making a comeback.
in Francisville. It's actually not in Philadelphia. I mean, it is now, but time period they put it in Francisville.
That's 2 miles away from Philadelphia, if I recall.
And it was on top of a hill, and it's still there. So, actually, they called it the Cherry Hill Prison for a while, which I didn't know when I was doing research. I was like, what the heck
I'm
is
glad
Cherry
that it's
Hill?
still, on top of... Because if it weren't, that would have been...
Confusing.
Well, something would have happened to the hill.
It moved.
Gosh.
It's like Hal's Moving Castle.
Wow.
It's Haviland's Moving Castle.
Francisville has its share of erosion problems.
Dear.
I mean, if it weren't on a hill anymore. Although
Once again, this is supposed to be a spooky podcast.
We're not gonna
get there.
We're not gonna get invited back. I can see how this is going.
We'll get to that episode 3.
That's right. Episode 3. But yeah, so it's on top
Is
of
there
the
a
hill to inspire
lizard
fear.
man?
There is no lizard man. No.
Are you sure? 'Cause we
Yes.
could bring back the lizard man if you would really like.
Dear Lord. Ray, go ahead. You wanted to say
Well,
something.
I was going to say that it was designed, if I understand correctly, for 250 folks, but soon exceeded its capacity, which bothers me because I don't like crowds.
Yeah, 256 to be exact.
256.
Yes.
And again,
I learned that on the audio tour because most things say 250 and the audio tour is like 256. I'm like, well, that's a perfect number. Okay, got you.
It's an even number.
oh, can I talk about the building? Because this is the most fascinating part for me.
PJ loves the building.
Yes.
I love the design of it. First off, I didn't know that it was...
Well, can Ray finish? How many inmates were forced to be there then?
450.
Yes.
Incidentally, also an even number.
Yeah, you go from 256 to 450. Oof.
That's
all I'm saying. That's
That's
oof.
close enough to double, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's close enough.
Not fun. So anyway, go ahead, honey.
Oh. I didn't realize that was one of the most expensive buildings ever made.
It was the most
At the
expensive in the USA at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At $800,000. The stone walls, because again, when you walk up to this thing, it looks like a medieval castle.
Yep.
Which is absolutely insane. When, to see this thing, in the middle of modern Philadelphia, and even at the time, in modern times, quote unquote, for the 1800s.
Victorian time period.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's still, this thing did not fit.
Well, it's like Ray said, it's to inspire fear.
Exactly,
I
yeah.
am not going to be bad because I'm not going there.
Yeah.
I hear they're overcrowded.
The walls are 30 feet high, and they go 10 feet below the ground also, so you can't tunnel under. Well, supposed to not.
Supposed to not be able to.
And they're 8 feet thick, and the way it's designed is there is a circular command center, and spokes in a wheel, there are different cell blocks that come off of it, these long hallways. So you can literally stand in one spot and just spin around in a circle and look down every hallway to see if everyone's in their cells or not. And if someone's out of their cell, you see them immediately because there's only, they're in the hallway and you're looking right at it.
I'd be like, how'd you get out of your feeding door?
And so we are posting a video, and I do stand in the center, and I do like a 360-degree spin and look down every hallway. So it's something that you can see when we post this episode.
It's a way to not pay very many guards, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Actually, it'll probably be like after we post this episode. So.
Fine. That's okay.
Yeah.
You're forgiven.
Thank you.
Anyway, so you said it was called the wagon wheel design. Online, I also learned that it was called the hub and spoke plan.
Hub and spoke, yeah.
Yeah, 2 different titles. But this exact design was actually used in New Jersey. There's another penitentiary down there, exact same design. So when I was doing my research, I got a little confused. I was like, what are we talking about? Where is Cherry Hill? What is this?
The other thing I loved about it that was good on paper, not so good any other time, is that each inmate had a door in the back of their cell that led to a little yard. Which... it's a great idea, to like allow them access to this, little area in the back.
Your own little
backyard.
Concrete heaven?
I mean, still fresh air.
Yeah, I guess.
So. But then they added a second story and half the inmates didn't have that.
Yeah, and...
because, you can't have a door to a yard when you're in the second story.
Well, and I remember Ray talking about the windows and like the natural light that kind of came in how it was dark.
Yeah.
But when I was thinking about it, when I was doing the research, when they added that second story, that meant they didn't get any of that light either. They have a little tiny slit of a window, no longer that beautiful kind of like archway light. No, so their natural light was also chopped out. So like, man, you went from like I don't want to say decent because it's a prison, but like a beautiful idea to something completely horrifying.
Yeah, morphed rather quickly into something that it was not intended to be.
Yeah.
To quote PJ, that escalated quickly. Also from Anchorman.
Well,
Yeah.
really.
I mean, it did. There's a second floor now.
Yeah. It really escalated and elevated.
Badoom ching.
But yeah,
Again, it's supposed to be a spooky podcast.
but the intention really wasn't so much to punish. It really was for self-reflection. It was, that's where it's good on paper, like the idea is that you're going to spend 23 hours a day by yourself and not talk to anybody for however long you're there, because you are just going to be thinking about what you did. It's like putting a kid in timeout, but for years at a time.
Yeah. It was the first ever penitentiary, and the key word there is penance. And that was the goal. Like, the place feels like a church when it has the arched ceilings, and it had murals on the walls all over the place, and all is supposed. Like, you can tell when you walk in there, like, this place is pretty beautiful in its own way. So they really the original plan was to get you repenting and make you a better person and heal you, and it just did not work.
Well, I like going to church for that hour that we're Catholic. So the hour you're sitting there.
That hour, yeah.
But I don't want to sit there for 24 hours or 23 hours, technically. That's a long time. However, going back to one person in the middle of the spokesman around the guard, if one person talked, they knew where you were because no one else is talking because it's quiet in there. So, hey, you, number 25, knock it off.
The acoustics, even today, are really something.
Yeah.
You can hear, like, the echoiness.
Even whispering. Whispering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho, do you want to talk about the actual, like, the original structure? Because you mentioned, like, the church-like feel, Laura.
Sure. So, originally it was, as we said, one story. It had, this nice little, like, a tiny little door. I mean, the doors are maybe, like, 4.5 feet.
There's a reason for it, actually.
Oh, okay. So we'll get into that.
Yep.
But
2 feet wide or so?
Yeah.
You have to go in, like, almost sideways.
Yeah, it's meant to be narrow and small. There's a reason for it.
But yeah, I mean, in all honesty, though, like, I know people who physically could not even go through that door, which, I mean, I know that this was built a long time ago, but still, there had to be some people that would have been a tight squeeze. Yeah. So, but it was really fascinating going through and seeing, each individual cell, that they, in addition to, like, the little yards, they all theoretically had skylights until the second story was added, and then that probably went away. But they did each have, like, a functioning toilet, a little bed, like a little table, and most of the inmates also had work that they would have to to handle throughout the day. Is that something we're going to go into separately?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Mhm.
so I won't go into that now. But plumbing, the indoor plumbing was actually a big thing. And actually for its day, it was pretty ahead of its time,
Yeah.
especially for a prison.
Well, some homes didn't have indoor plumbing.
Right.
The White
Right.
House
The
did not have
president,
that.
That's
Andrew
right.
Jackson, did not
I
have. Yeah,
know.
he was still using a little potty in his.
Oh, the chamber pot?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, well, although when you think about it, like
I
how
wasn't
much...
privy to that.
Sorry.
What a
It's supposed
crappy
to be a
joke.
Yeah.
spooky podcast. That's gonna be the title of this episode. It's supposed to be spooky.
Well, this, okay, it's not
Ray,
technically...
You're in trouble for making that joke.
I know.
Oh.
My toilet humor.
Urine. Oh, man. Okay, so this isn't scary per se, but it would be upsetting to live through it because there was a problem with the septic pipes.
Oh.
Oh yeah, this
Yeah.
is
They ran alongside the water pipes, apparently.
Oh.
and the boilers.
Oh.
Yeah, so when the
No.
boilers turned on to, heat the water, they were also heating the septic pipes.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there was indoor plumbing was a new thing. They're still figuring this
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
This was a learning
Oh.
experience, is what we would call it today. So it really, when things would heat up, there was quite the smell.
Yeah, and
Oh.
even at the beginning, they mentioned, if you go into Eastern State, you can see that there's water damage, obviously, because the walls and because of the subpar everything. From the very beginning, water was seeping in, like condensation. It was basically your basement if it's not
damp.
treated. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have the dampness, you have the cold. Then if you turn the heat on to make it not cold, you have poop smell. And there was water scarcity, especially in the summertime. So you're supposed to be flushing these toilets, and there is a rule that you're supposed to flush it once a day. Well, when you have scarcity of water, it became once or twice a week, if you're lucky. So you have that going on along with the heated water pipes. Oh yeah, it stank in there with the wetness.
Oh my god.
And you guys got to understand too. I think living in the Northeast of the United States, some folks don't really understand, but Philadelphia, even our area, gets hot in the
Oh, yeah.
summers
And humid.
and humid.
Oh,
Yes, we have very volatile temperatures.
And it can get very
That's
cold
when we
in
get
the
crazy
winters.
thunderstorms because of
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, when we were in there, it was warm.
Mhm.
It was really warm in there.
I
And it-
loved that one story where they said they would fill buckets of water and turn their cells into little pools because it's all cement, so the water's not going to seep through. I was like, I'd be doing that too because it was so hot, and we were
Yeah.
walking through and there's windows open, we had fans, and we're still sweating, and we're not being forced into a little small room for 23 hours, 24 hours.
So something in the video that we'll be posting is there's a really neat art exhibit about light, because they used light in the prison as a form of healing and natural lighting and all that, which is why these amazing skylights were in the cells and everything. But it would cause them to go mad, and they have this mirror bending illusion to kind of simulate going mad just by bending light.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was pretty incredible. Laura and I, when we were looking at it, we're like, what? Why is this here? What is this
I
all
got
about?
it right away. I loved it.
And I had to rewatch, and when I was editing the video and watching it, I read the sign
Mhm.
completely, and I'm like, oh, got it.
Well, I think that sideways
No.
too is it kind of showcases how you're off kilter anyway.
Yeah.
Even when I was walking out, I bumped my arm against the
Yeah.
plastic because you just feel so off
Yeah.
centered.
Yeah, walking out into that, that
Now, our listeners-
empty pit.
If they listen to this after this in a couple months, that might not be up anymore because they do art installations and they change, so that might
Yeah.
not be there in the
That's
future.
why, take a look at the video and
Yeah.
you'll see what we mean there.
So just to recap, so we're living in a tiny cell with very basic amenities
Yeah,
that's
8 by
very
12.
hot,
Cells
That-
8 by 12.
But there is a toilet.
but there is a toilet,
There's a toilet.
but it's essentially you're living in a giant
But-
stone porta potty.
Yeah, with
Yes.
heated septic, and that's not
Heated
great.
Yeah.
septic?
It's like walking into a porta potty at 90
I
degree weather.
know.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, and whenever you were out of your cell, you had to put this creepy scarecrow mask over your hood, over your face.
We haven't even gotten there yet, but yes.
Okay, yeah, so we'll get to that later.
Jeez.
All right.
Follow the script, PJ. It's supposed to be.
I'll read the script. Script reads me.
Oh my gosh.
Who are you, Steve Buscemi?
Who's that? I know it's Steve Buscemi. Anyway. So we mentioned, like, there's terrible heating and ventilation issues, right? But moving in there in 1849, okay, so 20 years after this place is opened, the prison was actually kind of like checked in on by people who were concerned, people from the community. And it was noted that the prisoners had to wrap themselves in their blankets and pace their cells just to keep warm. So even if they were heating the water and trying to get heating going on, it wasn't working because it's Pennsylvania and it's frigid and there's like no actual heat source in these rooms. But cleanliness was a part of the rehabilitation program. So they were able to bathe normally. And now I know this is for Ray, once every 2 or 3 weeks. Yum. But this is the 1800s. That was actually very common.
I know.
Yeah.
And
I don't have to like it.
well, I have to say, too, that it's not like, I mean, maybe in the summer when you're sweating profusely, it's horrible, but it's not like they're doing a lot either to get dirty.
Yeah.
They're just sitting there and they've got 2 half-hour breaks throughout the day to
go outside.
Yeah.
It's like,
The worst you get is like some greasy hair,
Right.
Which is, I can't stand that. I need to shampoo.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, I could not live in the 1800s. I just could not.
Oh, I wouldn't be very good at it either.
Do you want to watch, like, Braveheart?
No, thank you. You guys don't understand. I'm digressing just a little bit, but I have trouble with period pieces because people didn't bathe that often, to Shanna's point.
Mm.
That's the one thing
Every
that...
2 to 3 weeks? No, thank you.
If you're lucky, yeah. That new Pride and Prejudice, I hate it because it's so short. Like, you got to watch the B&E version, obviously.
Of course.
But the Keira Knightley version, her hair looks greasy all the time. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it should. Her clothes are hideous, and that's completely wrong for the time period. But her hair, it should be greasy.
There's a lot that was wrong with that. But that's neither here nor there.
So, during my research, though, and back to the rehabilitation process, right? Because they actually want cleanliness. They want you to be in church 24/7 pretty much. And they give you a job, as you mentioned, Laura. They actually gave fantastic food, too. So I actually put this in my script. But, like...
healthy stuff.
Yes. At the beginning of this, there was no door into the main hallway that the guard could see through, which they mentioned to you in the audio tour, right? When you'd walk down, it was just these, like, little feeding holes, if you will. Like little slits. The only door that was there was on the outside to come in. The hallway was just your little feeding hole. And through that, you would get your books. You'd get anything else you would need, like, if you needed a new shirt or whatever, your job for the day. But food. Food was totally important to the rehabilitation process. So people at Eastern State were getting fed better than people, like, living in Philadelphia. And so they talk about this in the audio tour, too. But you got 3 meals a day, which was uncommon for a lot of people because it's a lot of food. And you got generous portions. At dinner time, you actually got, like, unlimited potatoes, which is pretty cool. But you always got meat and vegetables. Dinner was always...
Take that, Ireland.
Yeah. Incidentally, they also had their share of potatoes. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Anyway.
No, they did. Didn't they? They got potatoes.
They did. Yeah, it was unlimited potatoes. And...
it comes full circle.
It's supposed to be a spooky podcast.
Wagon wheel.
Wagon
It just
wheel.
comes full circle.
Anyway.
Definitely not getting invited back.
Now you got beef and pork as your choices of food, but always boneless, obviously, so you can't hurt yourself or somebody else. You can't make a shiv out of a bone, right? But you also got soup, and you were allotted a pound of bread every day.
Wow.
Wow.
Right? Again, I found that in my research. I'm coming. Make me a bread soup bowl. I am ready to go. So anyway, that was brand new to prisons because generally you got fed scraps, right? You didn't get fed much at all. Or if it was kind of like not so great food.
Well, this goes back to the great on paper thing where they're not trying to truly punish people. They want people to be reflective and essentially like kind of be like evolving.
Yeah. And something we'll get to later is like the terms weren't that bad either that you served. Like, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But so this whole new system that Ben Franklin creates is actually called the Pennsylvania system, or they also called it the separate system, like separatists, if you will. And that was in direct contrast to the New York system, like, Sing Sing prison, if you will, which they kind of mention when you're there at the end during the audio tour. But the Pennsylvania system was actually so renowned. People came to visit it to get the idea. The French loved the idea. Charles Dickens hated it. So you get this influx of people who are like, pros and cons for it. But this humane reform, like this approach was just phenomenal. And again, great on paper. But as you mentioned, Laura, too, they left this place with a job. They were trained how to be cobblers or weavers or what have you. They got a job so they could be reflective, but also, kind of like contemplate and think of their future life.
Except for the women in the prison. They got to cook and clean.
Listen, okay. That's my life every day.
Yeah, no, the women aren't learning a skill. They're just cooking for everyone. Figures.
As I like to say, like, we were there listening to this, and I'm like, wait, I had to lay down in a bed and contemplate and read the Bible, and it's quiet.
Eat nice meals.
Eat nice
and
meals,
eat 3
yeah.
meals a day, and I get to go outside for an hour. I'm in? Question mark?
I mean, but there are smelly circumstances.
I know, right?
Too.
Smelly
I mean,
circumstances.
On paper,
the
it's
heat.
wonderful. An application.
If it was well insulated and if the plumbing worked.
If I had an actual mattress,
if there
not
wasn't a
wood.
water shortage. if you
Yeah,
didn't-
yeah.
If I could turn my room into a pool, I'm in. Like that is inventive. All right, anyway, so again, no doors.
What happens when it gets cold, though, and you have to get rid of the water?
I would assume you just kind of put it down your toilet,
I guess.
right? Like just keep picking it up.
Sop it up with your shirt and
Ew.
squeeze it out, and then,
Freaking Ray out over here.
guard, I need a new shirt. Timmy, what did you do, Timmy? Did you make a pool again?
Anyway, so the doors that did exist, as you mentioned, they're small, they're narrow. It was done on purpose because it forced you to bow as you entered any area. So from the very beginning, you are forced to be penitent because you're bowing like, Catholics do for the altar. Do other religions do that, or is it just us? Because you walk and we
Bow to your
genuflect. and-
sensei
Yeah.
Yeah.
before a fight.
Sure. I guess this is a spiritual war. It's
I
happening.
mean,
So
I guess
take it.
I think bowing, even in terms of like royalty and stuff, would always be
Mhm.
considered a sign
Yeah,
of respect.
Correct,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know about other
Yeah.
religions,
But
but
yeah, that's
Well,
why the
there's
doors were small.
there's even kowtowing,
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
like that. Like bowing is definitely
Yeah. Other peoples do it.
yeah,
But it creates a feeling of humility as you bow into your
lowering your head
Yeah.
to someone.
But this is also while you're decked interestingly. As you mentioned, when you came in, what happened to you, PJ? What they put on you?
oh, so they put on this creepy hood that made you look like the Scarecrow from Batman.
But it was black.
What?
It was a black hood.
Or white with
Oh, it's
black
true. Yeah,
holes.
yeah.
Is there any reason, if it's black or white, does one signify something over the
No,
other?
just
or
they,
is
No.
they
just-
toss
we
it over
just
your
ran
head.
out of
Yeah.
fabrics and now
Yeah.
we're using
Can
this.
I have a pink one?
is this in keeping with the goth?
I want to tie
Because
that.
we'll get into that with episode 3 when we
Episode
talk about
3, yeah.
spooky stuff of psychics going in and getting this vision of just two black eyes staring at them from the corner of a cell, and then someone will show them a picture of the person in the uniform. And they're like, "What's that?" Oh, that's what they had to wear, and they're like, "Oh my god!"
Ew.
Yeah.
Don't like that.
But
Mm-mm.
from the time you enter, they put this hood on you on purpose so you can't see where you're going, and then you are you kind of wake up people in your prison cell. So and when you go to leave your cell, that hood goes back on. Even to go to get your shower or your bath, your every 2-3 weeks bath, you got that on to go,
Yeah.
and you had your showers individually or your baths individually, so you never saw anybody even
Never
doing
saw
that.
anyone. Never talked to them.
I
Nothing.
can't imagine not talking that long.
What about the people who are cooking? There had to be more than one person cooking.
I'm sure that
But I guess still, no
there
talking.
are some uncontrollable moments where people were talking to each other,
be.
especially once people started sharing bunks. You know,
Yeah.
what I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
that was mentioned in 1913. That's just gone.
yeah, that
Yeah.
whole no talking rule is
Mhm.
completely unmanageable.
I think you work quietly in a kitchen. Maybe the guards are watching you as you're stirring your potatoes.
but you still have to talk a little bit. Hey, I need this. There has to be communication.
Yeah. Sous chef. Come.
Unless you're really good at playing the mind
Ugh, stop. Or charades.
or charades.
That was a game they used to play back then. For fun. Anyway. So they also were physically examined, and there was a great ledger book that actually wrote down your height, your weight, everything. They really went into detail checking who you were. And also if you could read and write, because it would help you with the job you were given. So, that's creepy. But anyway, off you go then to your prison. So they actually would mark everything down about you. So I used the quote from Poe at the beginning of this for Fall of the House of Usher because the biggest thing we're going to talk about as we go into part 2 and part 3 is the amount of mental illness that came from this. As you mentioned, like forced isolation, forced confinement, forced solitude and quiet. Like, I say that I could last for 2 years, but I got to talk to something. So, I'm talking to my hand. How's it going, hand?
I know, it's reminding me of the movie Castaway with that stupid volleyball. But I mean, you know, we're people. We're designed to be in tribes, if you will.
Social
We're
creatures.
social animals.
Oh, there are tests of like chimpanzees and stuff of put in isolation. They just die. Like they're given everything they need to survive, all the nutrition and all that but no communication with anything, and they will just die.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Charles Dickens hated it. When he came to visit, he absolutely hated the Pennsylvania system. And like what he said about it was not nice. He was so angry because
he didn't have anything nice to say.
No.
I mean, like, at the very least, the whole system offered education to be kind of built into the penitents, right?
Well, yeah, the idea on paper was fantastic, but you're walking through, like 20 years after this place opens, they're seeing these people who are freezing, wrapped in blankets, walking in their cells just to stay warm, So what was happening in that building was not what was on paper.
Of course, he was also not a fan of what was happening in England either.
That's true.
He just was not satisfied with anything.
I
But
think
then
not.
again, this was the 19th century. There wasn't a lot to be happy about. Like what? Like working conditions? No.
But that's why
Medicine? No.
he was a social activist because he lived.
Oh, I understand that. I'm just saying, like, I understand why there wasn't a lot to be happy about.
Because England was a hot mess. His dad is the reason that he had to work in basically a child sweatshop, So he understood the have and have-nots really well. That's why when you read his works, that's coming from his personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Please, some may have some more. That was his life.
I guess in some ways, this actually isn't so different from a debtor's prison because they had to work there and they're putting the people to work here. I mean, in theory, they're doing it to give them to occupy them.
Yeah, and they're getting fed better.
Right?
But-
Right.
And it's to teach them a trade afterwards, so they claim.
Well, and later, like, the education, like, goes great. Like, they actually add more in terms of education. But he actually was quoted as, after visiting Eastern State, Charles Dickens said, "I hold this slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain to be immeasurably worse than any torture of the body." So he recognized that, like, cutting people off, solitary confinement, is way worse than any other torture. And we still use the Pennsylvania system today. We use it in solitary confinement. We use it as a torturing device, sometimes for protection, too.
Right.
But usually solitary confinement is because you were bad and they're putting you down there to be tortured.
Not nearly for as long as they did it back then.
Yeah. But anyway, who wants to discuss education then? Because there was a lot of reform happening to make them smart, to help their peeps.
Well, the education was more of like learning a trade, if I understand correctly, and some of that involved, what was it, cobbling, so shoes,
Yep, shoes.
Weaving.
Wait. Oh my God, shoes.
Let's get some shoes.
Oh boy.
And again, this is a series. Hey, you started this one. I do not take
Talk about an old
responsibility.
reference right
I know.
there.
If our listeners
The
listening,
one
hopefully
thing
you
I
got
saw
that.
was that caning, right, was a trade, but I don't actually know what that is. I think of something else
They're
with
going
regard
to cane
to
you with a stick.
yeah, and I'm like, well, I don't really need to learn that. I can pretty much figure it out on my
I'll
own.
take care of myself.
Yeah.
But they also learned weaving. We'd weave the cane to make chairs.
Oh, that sounds so much more civil than the
Then
other kind
beating
of
people.
caning.
Yeah. So cobbling, weaving, caning, then what, Ray?
Well, as the population grew, there were further demands placed on the inmates. So, more buildings, that translated to more buildings for folks to advance their education. Things like achieving their high school diploma.
Which, uncommon in the 1800s.
And even more uncommon.
Studying law?
Yeah, they let them study law.
Which is brilliant.
I think of like Shawshank Redemption a little bit there. Like I'm learning this trade because I'm in jail. So it's interesting.
But it's also interesting to me. It's like, how were they doing this? Like, just by themselves? Just they had books and they just had to read it?
educators there.
Oh, okay. So they had a little bit of interaction at some point.
Yep. Well, that's, again, like, from 1913 on.
Oh,
like,
this
it
was happening later in
yeah,
the...
because that was
okay.
added. But you would have to have some kind of discussion, especially if you're being taught how to cobble shoes.
Right.
I would-
Or like, I mean, I'm assuming that some people were probably being taught how to read.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to talk to people to teach.
Yeah.
Period. You can't learn to read just by looking at the letters. I mean, I guess you could. Some people have, but it's extremely rare.
And I don't know how long it would have taken. Do you guys know, being educators, how long back in the day to achieve a high school diploma? Like, would it be like the standard 4 years? Because
So yes and no, because back then you had a primer and you had to go through the primer for your education. So in a one-room schoolhouse, you could have people, we're all, let's say we're all the same age. I could be at 4th year. He could be at 6th year. He could be at 8th year. She could be a teacher now. Laura's teaching us because she passed the 8th grade. So like after 7th grade, especially, like if you can read at 7th grade level, you're reading at the level of adults in America, because that's where our education kind of stopped. A 16-year-old woman could be a teacher if she went through normal school. Yeah, it was a very different time period because, again, it was all your own acceleration. So
I was just wondering, because like most of the what do you call it? The sentences, what was it, like 2 to 8 years or whatever?
Yeah.
So that would be
the
like
longest was 8
appropriate.
years, actually. Most of them were 2 years.
So it'd be like an appropriate time, at least from my perspective, to achieve an education.
If there's no weekends, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Not 180 days, it's 365.
Yes. You're part of the 2-year program.
You are, though. I think like it's 180. So yeah, that's
Right?
That's 4 school years
Yeah.
in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Bam, right? Look at your math. I almost math. I'd use my fingers, but I math. Our listeners can't see that. That's me. Anyway, so yes, you're right.
I'm sure they wish they could, though.
No, they don't need to see this. That's like I said, it's a letdown once you see this face.
I was talking about the finger thingy.
Oh, me finger counting.
I
yeah.
mean, but that too, the face.
It's all let down. It's all let down. This is supposed to be a spooky podcast, Shanna. Anyway. But yeah, again, a 2-year break from everything, apart from the stinky smelly. Like, if it was perfect on paper, 2 years, I think I could hack it.
I don't know. I need more than just the Bible to read, though. I'd need entertainment.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, they were in solitary confinement for all intents and purposes, but like they also, as I understand, there were animals at the later. Okay.
Well, no.
No.
Ray's correct, because Charles Dickens actually noticed that there was a rabbit in one person's cell in the 1800s. So that's in my animal section later, but it's true. Ray is correct. There were animals. Yes, they had pets even then. Bunnies don't make noise, so they learned meant to be quiet too.
As long as a cat doesn't have it, it doesn't make noise.
Cats were also allowed at some points.
Yes.
Well, that makes sense, though. Somewhere like that, I'm sure you'd have mice and rats and things. So
rats were actually very common, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't put that in here because I felt gross, but yeah.
Wait, rats as a pet, or rats
no,
as
rats
like a...
walking around, you know.
Yeah, you'd need cats to combat that, I would think.
Cats for the rats.
Cats for the rat. That's correct.
Swallow the cat to catch the rat.
So let's just skip forward to 1913 when...
PJ, I don't know why.
Listen to the Lizard... You heard the Lizard Man podcast episode like this. Get away from the microphone.
I mean, were there tunnels under this thing? Could there be lizard men under the...
There were tunnels, remember?
Well,
I didn't go into the famous, tunnel escape
There was
for
a tunnel,
this.
yes.
I'm putting that in part 3.
I'm just saying, lizard people are not totally out of the question.
So you're saying Sutton is a lizard man. There you go.
Oh.
We have
If
lizard
you listen
people.
to the 25-minute mark of Ghost Hunters, in the background you'll hear...
No, they won't. Anyway. So 1913 is when Pennsylvania system is scrapped because they got to get more inmates in there. They got to just bulk up their numbers. And so they start doubling up people, and that is it. Just done. And so at that point, since you have more people in a cell, and you're treating like the New York system or the Sing Sing system, they allow things like TVs and radios and chess and talking to people and playing football and all that kind of stuff.
Baseball, too.
Baseball,
That was
too.
a thing. I saw the pictures.
Well, and the stories, too. But the baseball going over the walls, that's how they got their drugs.
Yes. People would attach drugs to the baseball or a rock and throw it back over into the
Big brain.
into the prison.
Big brain. They can't dig down 10 feet, so, it's a lot of work. So anyway. So
Volleyball.
Oh my gosh. Well said! It goes away. So 1913. Eastern State changes for the worse. So the next 60 years, it is just completely downhill. Because it was even falling apart at that point, you know? And they realized they had prison labor. So they were having their prisoners fix things, building new parts of the buildings, you know, like for education, also death row and guard towers. They're building all that kind of stuff because they have free labor. So that starts up here as well. Go Pennsylvania.
Including one guy who was supposedly replastering his cell, right?
Oh, yes. Because he was so good. Well, I didn't go over that, and this is part 1. But if you want to discuss a little bit, go ahead. You can.
I know. I mean, if this is happening in another section,
well, you'll get a little taste from you.
Okay.
Because what happens?
Yeah. So it's very, very interesting. This guy, William Sutton, is apparently very good at his craft, which is replastering, and so he asks if he can fix up his own cell. They allow it. And it turns out that he was using the opportunity to dig himself a tunnel. And as PJ mentioned earlier,
incredible.
Yep, because these walls, these 30-foot walls up, also went 10 feet down, which I don't know if he knew that or how he encountered it.
Yes.
How do you know that?
You ask people, like, so, this is a nice wall. Where'd this wall, like, what's it look like on the, what are the specs on it?
Does this wall go all the way down?
I'm working, I don't want to brag, but I'm kind of a little bit like an engineer myself, so.
I mean, can I also just say, in 1829, can you imagine having to dig down 10 feet in the virgin earth, the hard rockiness that is Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
And it was like springtime, wasn't it? It wasn't like summer where the soil's warm, too. It was...
Well, they took over a cherry orchard, so I'm going to assume that the ground was a little softer.
Even then you've got tree roots.
I'm just trying
those
to...
poor cherries.
I'm just trying to help out.
Apparently, though, somewhere else in the prison, because he was a plaster guy, he like carved his initials into the wall, and it's still there. His initials are in the prison walls. Carrie was telling me
of course,
about it.
Carrie.
She knows everything about
part
that
2.
place.
Yeah, she's probably going, excuse me.
Yeah.
So
next episode, you'll hear all about that. But she was good friends with the guards, and they would just let her in and take her up to the guard towers and to all these places that no one else is allowed to go.
Back to the Sutton escape, like, it's so much like Shawshank Redemption, because as we mentioned as we were walking through, where did he hide the plaster? I'm like, did he flush down the toilet? Like, he had to be dumping it somewhere, because he dug for a while. And it wasn't just him. He had other friends who escaped with him.
I mean, I guess, because they knew he was theoretically replastering his cell, he must have been able to get away with, like, moving materials up, but it seems like it'd have to be a lot of materials, because he had to
bring
dig
materials in.
No, but he had to, like, dig, like, 15 feet down, and then
follow the sewage
like
pipe,
20 feet over or 25 feet over, and then another 10 feet up.
That's crazy. And he did it in less than a year.
And he did it in less than, although, as we said when we were there, if you have 23 hours a day
or 24 if you don't get your time outside.
Yep. Hey, you got your own cardio happening. So
I once thought it would take a man 50 years to tunnel out of Shawshank. Old Andy did it in less than 3.
Thank you, Morgan
Right?
Freeman. Red.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Red.
I think you have it.
I'm called Red because I'm Irish.
Maybe because I'm Irish.
I actually have a quote from Shawshank Redemption.
Because in the book, he is Irish.
I know, but it's Morgan Freeman in the movie, so yeah, they did a good job. I don't care. I'm sorry.
It was a wink smile situation.
We just watched a TV show episode about someone who visited the Shawshank prison and got haunted, and something followed her home.
Actually, the quote I have is actually quite beautiful, and it's meant for this.
Because the movie is quite...
To quote the Shawshank Redemption, I have to remind myself that some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. When they fly away, the part of you that knows it was a sin to lock them up does rejoice. But still, the place you live in is that much more drab and empty that they're gone. I guess I just miss my friend. It's beautiful. Anyway, let's go back to the...
That's what all of Will Sutton's friends said, and then he came back.
Spoiler alert, he was caught
very quickly.
Because as you said, when you're walking outside in those outfits, you're going to get noticed.
Yeah, because like some of the pictures show like they're in the traditional black and white striped pajamas, like the outfits.
Very gothic.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's hard to miss that. Like, I think I saw him. Oh, he's right. No, he's right there. Literally.
Yeah. Yeah, he should have dug the tunnel a little further out, apparently.
Just keep going.
Just keep digging.
And at that point, he's digging up dirt. So where is he putting the dirt when he brings it bucket by bucket? Where is it
So,
going?
I mean, this is the thing that I just can't even
In the yard,
understand.
maybe?
I mean, firstly, it's
A
the
la
That's a
Shawshank.
lot of dirt, though.
Mm.
But the people who had to build the wall and dig down 10 feet in this huge thing to put the wall in the first place. And then you've got this guy digging through on his own. It's absolutely wild to me.
I guess when you want to get out,
I guess.
nothing will stop you, including 10 feet down below the earth.
Mhm.
Nothing will stop you.
Incredible.
23 hours a day
Well,
in that
what did
cell.
he even
I mean,
use to dig his tunnel?
He
Like,
asked to
I mean,
replaster.
Yeah, but,
so he might
but
have
plaster, when I think of plastering, I think of something very
Had, yeah, just that flat.
flat.
Yeah, he might have had like a trowel, but I know you're talking like a small
But
hand tool.
who needs a trowel to plaster?
And I'm sorry, how long was he digging? Because it doesn't take that long to replaster.
Well, less than a year. He was working
Yeah.
fast. But then I guess he'd also have to be replastering himself.
Unless he furnished his plastering tool into something that was more dig,
oh.
like where they
I have
Maybe
something.
he used a spoon.
Maybe he used his tongue.
Oh,
Ew, Ray.
goodness.
There's the lizard man.
But that's a good point.
This
But
is supposed to be a spooky podcast.
he's, he also have to
the
keep up.
idea is scary to me.
He'd have to keep up the ruse, so he'd have to keep up the facade of replastering
Ooh.
himself.
We don't
How
do
about that?
dad jokes on my.
I actually do a lot, often. Not you, but it happens at you.
Oh,
a
I know
lot.
it happens on my podcast. I just think it would come from you. This is supposed to be a safe space.
I'm sorry. I got caught up in the moment.
No.
It hit me. Facade.
And I found fun research just for you. And look what you're doing
Okay.
to me.
Okay.
No.
I want the fun research.
I do too,
Okay.
actually.
So we're not going to go over death row, and we're not going to really hit on solitary confinement, which they called the Klondike, because that's all for part 3. But just so our listeners know, we are going to discuss death row and what that was like. And we are going to discuss the Klondike, which was their hole in the ground pretty much for solitary confinement.
And the operating room.
Oh, obviously.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're going to discuss the iron gag. We're going to discuss all the torturing devices, the punishments to help you learn the error of your ways, I guess, to put it that way.
Yeah.
Because you're not already in solitary. You can be in more solitary. Just so you know, it can always be worse.
Hey,
Which is
if
the
you
Klondike.
don't have a tongue, you'll be really quiet.
Exactly. Oh, wow, that got dark. Anyway, so part 3 will be all of that. So here's fun stuff, because this entire situation is very much like Penhurst. It's depressing, mental illness, 1,400 people die
Mhm.
at this place. No, 85,000 inmates were there,
Yep.
generally speaking, but 1,400 died here. All right, so that's Ray can do the math, what the percentage is. It's not as bad as Penhurst, but it's not a happy place, right? But here's something happy. Pep the dog. All right, we loved learning about Pep. Who was Pep, Laura?
Pep the dog was adorable. The photo that we saw is the black lab. And even in the photo, you have to look it up. I'm sure this is online or we can post a photo.
Definitely.
But yeah, this lab, the ears are back. Pep looks guilty.
He
I'm
does.
sorry. Pep looks guilty AF. Really.
What can I say? He was wrongly accused.
That's true.
Yeah.
He was innocent the whole time.
He was innocent.
Trooper.
He was
Yeah.
accused of
He was-
murdering a cat.
Yeah, he was sentenced to life in air quotes. But the truth is, he was,
A donation.
yes, it's for the people there. So they mentioned Pep, right? There was another famous dog that I found in my research. This is my
Ooh.
fun fact for you. Her name was Lady.
Wait.
She was a beagle.
Was Pep's real name the Tramp?
No, it was
Are you
Pep.
sure? Because
Yes.
it could be
Different time
Lady and the
periods.
Tramp. I'm just saying.
It could have been, but no. She's a beagle. Well, was. And she belonged to the captain of the guards, actually. So she was there for quite a while, too. So there were 2 dogs. And as Ray mentioned, there were multiple animals. They were allowed to have pets. And so there were rabbits. Charles Dickens actually puts that in his notes about Eastern State. And people had birds and cats as well. So it wasn't totally solitary, especially after obviously 1913. But even back in the 1800s, they were finding ways to kind of tweak it a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. So anyway, due to the rising costs of Eastern State, it is shut down in 1971. There was just no way to upkeep it. We have a very antiquated neo-Gothic monstrosity and terrible septic and everything else. It stood empty for 20 years, as you guys
It is a
mentioned.
great location.
It's a great location.
I mean, it's 2 miles away from Philadelphia.
Turn it into a hotel.
Yeah, so for 20 years it's empty, and they were going to sell it off.
For commercial use.
Yeah, for condos. So, like, you know,
Mhm.
but the other one, which blows my mind, Laura, remember that? What was the other one they were going to sell it for?
A mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Eastern State as a mall? Of all things. I can't.
I mean,
It's a great location.
I
As
know,
Ray
it
said.
is.
it is.
I know, and there's ample parking nearby.
Watch out, King of Prussia, we're taking you on.
Although,
Like
ironically, if they turned it into a mall, it'd probably be empty again
it
today.
would, yeah, no
Yeah,
question, because King of Prussia, but also malls are dying. But so of course the concerned citizens of Philadelphia say no, let's turn to something historical, and so now it is a historical landmark. You go there when you buy your tickets, the money goes back to help fix up and kind of keep it going. So it's good to go visit Eastern State because the money is going to be used to continually renovate this place and keep it available for us to learn and to pay Steve Buscemi. I'm sure he's still getting kickbacks
Yes.
for this, for doing that.
Yeah, I wonder.
Me too. How much does he make? Steve Buscemi, if you're listening. Anyway.
And I'm sure he is.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Number one fan.
Every time Con Air gets aired on TBS,
He's
Or
watching it.
Fargo.
he
He was
gets
in
that
Fargo,
check.
too.
Oh, yeah, Fargo, yeah.
Anything else you guys want to add about Eastern State? Because you were there. You saw it firsthand.
I think one of the pieces that we didn't talk about, but probably you'll be discussing with Jackie, would be Al Capone.
Oh, yes. And we're going to...
Mhm.
Very notorious.
Yes, he was there. We were going to discuss it because I was going to do like a feature of like all the famous prisoners that were there.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm really impressed the folks that run Eastern State and the things that they have on display,
Mhm.
because it goes beyond, it transcends the history of Eastern State, and they approach some things from a very much like a social justice perspective.
I agree.
And
Yeah,
even have
yeah.
commentary on our own prison system and how it compares to prison systems from all over the world. And it's not a very favorable, spoiler alert, it's
Yeah.
not the most favorable of comparisons.
Yeah.
And it's also air conditioned.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that
And
very
I
much.
think I think that really impressed me. They use it beyond the history, they use it as a platform to spread awareness.
Mhm.
Well, even if you're not discussing just that, because when you go out to the prison yard, that's where you see like that huge structure, and then of course
Mhm.
there's that exhibit. But even throughout the different cell blocks, they have up all these really cool like billboards, and they showcase like what people were there, like what they did that was so wrong or whatever,
Mhm.
and just the injustice of what they suffered when they were there,
Yeah.
and getting actual like former prisoners to give quotes about it too. It was great to hear their voices over the audio.
Yeah, because there's still inmates and guards who are still alive today
Mhm.
who
Yeah.
were, who were there.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that.
Mhm.
So I agree. Like that whole
That was really impressive.
Yeah.
And they referred to it, they kept referring to this thing in the yard as a graphical representation. I completely,
Oh, yeah.
that was over my head. I thought I was looking at a monument.
That
Mhm.
statue.
It's a
yeah.
giant bar graph.
The bar graph,
A
yeah.
three-dimensional
Yeah.
bar graph that's like, what, 10
Mhm.
feet tall?
Yeah.
At
or
least.
more.
At a
No,
time.
I think it's higher because like,
Maybe.
it was
Parts of
really
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it
The American part was really high.
Oh my
Not in
God.
a good way.
Yeah.
well, yeah, I would just add for anybody who has never seen the documentary 13th, I would
Yes.
highly recommend that you watch it. It's about the history of America's prison systems. So it's not specific to Eastern State, but it is very, very informative. It's available for free on YouTube, and it's also on Netflix.
Mhm.
So 13th, it's about it's titled so because of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery.
Mhm.
But when you think about it, what is prison?
Well, yeah. So they found a legal prison.
Loophole,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was
Mhm.
they realized they had free labor.
Yeah.
That's
It
what
is
was used.
really something. Like,
Mhm.
you dragged us into it, and we ended up watching and we're like, okay, yeah, this is
Well,
truly
'cause, like, and
like
It's something,
something
for us to
everyone
point out
needs
too.
to see.
We don't like things that are pushy and like really like this is my opinion. We don't like that kind of stuff. We wanna make our-
heavy-handed.
Yeah, we want to make our own opinions, but like Eastern State isn't heavy-handed. They're just
No.
very logical, and the way they do it is so humane and so beautiful.
Yeah.
You can draw your own conclusions, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's just the facts.
Mm-hmm.
And same with 13th. It's
Yeah, they
just
have-
presenting you history.
Yeah. You'll see in the video, there's this amazing room of like 5 screens, and it shows like, and it starts ticking up the years of politicians talking about changing, the way prisons are and everything. And meanwhile, there's this graph that's just going up year by year by year. And eventually the graph starts stretching out onto the other screens and taking over those screens.
Oh, you mean like in Eastern State?
Yeah, in Eastern State.
I thought you said 13th, sorry.
No. And that was just like...
It's eye-opening. When it takes three
really
screens.
Yeah, it starts just spreading across the room, this huge graph. And, and we're only in the 1990s and it's still growing. That was unbelievable.
We learned the last time Pennsylvania did capital punishment was in the 1990s. And so it's pretty recent, within our lifetime, that they did capital punishment. We also learned that Texas had the most amount of capital punishments of all the different states. Texas justice.
Yeah, that sounds...
To quote my previous podcast, don't mess with Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Starts a little later. I have had work stuff.
Thank you for driving us down there that day, too.
Yeah, thanks for organizing the trip to Eastern State. I do recommend it to anybody who is interested in anything historical. It's a very, very worthwhile way to spend an afternoon.
And you can go through a guided tour or the audio. I preferred the audio. We've done both now. I preferred the audio.
Absolutely.
You can take it at your own pace.
Exactly. And for a place like this, I think that's awesome.
And I noticed too, like when Ray would walk around, like, you would too, Laura, you'd walk around. And so you look on these little billboards and say, well, type in 45 for this one. And so we all heard different stories because there are so many little random small side stories. You could be there for 3-4 hours just listening to the audio. Yeah. So we all got something different based on our own interests, which I thought I liked a lot, which you can't get in a regular tour because you're following a tour guide. Yeah. So I would go audio tour all the way.
And often you can't hear the tour guide that well if you're in a larger group. Yeah.
That's true.
And people ask dumb questions.
There's no such thing as dumb questions.
Ooh.
Maybe in your group there was.
There was a college question. Did we ever tell you the pulp story?
No.
When we were in college, we were in an environmental class. And first day of class, the professor's talking about how we're deforesting, tearing down forests.
He sounds so smart. And I'm like, oh God, I'm not supposed to be here.
To chop up trees, and a lot of them turn into pulp and paper. Mm-hmm. And he says this 3 times, maybe 4 times before this kid behind us raises his hand. And he's like, yeah, what's up? And kid goes, so when you say pulp, are you talking about the stuff in orange juice? And Shannon and I shared a look, and I had this smile on my face, because I'm like, this class is going to be so easy.
We got A's. So
I will not have to put any effort in this class.
So I stand corrected.
Now, there are dumb questions. There goes one of our listeners. He's like, oh, that was me. I know them.
I'm going to type a nasty email.
Please go ahead. I'd love to read emails.
We don't get emails except from Jackie and Tim, which we really appreciate. We want more.
All of them, all the time.
I'll send you guys an email.
Thank you, Ray. Okay. Appreciate it. All right,
gamesoboard@gmail.com.
Okay.
Anyway, we also have our contest going, our giveaway. So make sure that you hop in and do that before Labor Day, because we're drawing Labor Day weekend. Well, we're having the spinning wheel choose for us. So good luck to everyone. You can comment on the YouTube videos. We got a couple people that way. Mm-hmm. You can email us directly, which we've had that done. You can Facebook message us. We've had that done. Or you can comment on the picture if you can find it now. We should probably bump it to the top again, boost our post.
Yeah.
But any of those...
The video is on the main page of the Well House's Games Overboard page. You go to gamesoverboard.com, click on Well House Exorcism, there's the YouTube video, and you get to see everything that's in there, and you can just comment on that video.
And then you were entered to win, all right? So no worries there. We want to see our listeners awarded for being our awesome listeners. So anyway, anything you want to add, PJ?
Just that, if you email us, there's a good chance you could Zoom with us and meet us like Jackie and Tim did.
We took Jackie on a Zoom tour of our basement
and
for the
Tim
Well House.
Got to be in the basement.
Yes, he did.
So, yeah,
You're in the Well House.
If you want to meet us virtually or in person, just give us an email.
We're lonely.
Nobody talks to me.
No, because you tell bad dad jokes. Anyway, have a great week. And
Ray just kind of shrugs like, well, yeah.
Yeah, accurate.
But I enjoy them, so. I mean, I don't think it's like a con.
You can leave now.
Speaking of prison.
Wow, that happened. Anyway, so as always, think spooky thoughts. In the greenest of our valleys, by good angels tenanted, once a fair and stately palace, radiant palace, reared its head. In the monarch thought's dominion, it stood there. Never seraph spread a pinion over fabric half so fair. But evil things in robes of sorrow assailed the monarch's high estate. Ah, let us mourn, for never morrow shall dawn upon him desolate. And round about his home the glory that blushed and bloomed is but a dim-remembered story of the old time entombed. And travelers now within that valley through the red-litten windows see vast forms that move fantastically to a discordant melody, while like a rapid ghastly river through the pale door a hideous throng rush out forever and laugh but smile no more. Edgar Allan Poe, Fall the House of Usher.